Go. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Robert Swartwood here. Tonight, I am joined by a best-selling author of over a half dozen novels, whose recent novel, some writer named David Bishop said, if you're looking for a dark, moody, and bewitching tale of deception and suspense, let Emily Carpenter's latest cast its spell on you. You're in for a wicked treat. That's right, it's your favorite writer and mine, Emily Carpenter. Emily, how the heck are you?
I am doing well, even better now that I'm hanging out with you. And thanks for
Yeah.
that blurb, by the way. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, we're going to want to talk about the book. Now, that book obviously is your latest. It's called A Spell for Saints and Sinners. We're, of course, going to get to the new book. Everyone can see it behind you. There's a little big poster of
Little
it, too, which I
poster.
forgot to
Yeah.
ask before we started. Do you actually have a copy there with you, too?
Yes, it's on the other side of the
That's fine. That's
room.
okay. Anyway, well, everyone should just go to the bookstore and grab one. So
Yeah.
we're definitely going to get to the new book, and we had chatted previously, so I'm not really going to go into depth about how you got started, the whole your time in the soap opera world, and
Yes,
and
yes.
everything else. But basically, I don't know, like what's new with you? What have you been up to?
Well, mainly just launching this book and doing some bookstore events and launch party and podcasts and interviews and like trying not to stress out about a book launch, trying to play it cool. Um, and I haven't really been doing a lot of writing. I feel like I'm taking a moment I have a book already I'm waiting to get some edits back, a book that's coming out next year. So I'm just kind of taking this space to like I wake up every morning and I'm like, your seventh book just came out, so you can like take a minute and enjoy it.
Yeah. And I think as I always use, I think Walter Mosley had said that writing is not necessarily, at least to him, writing is not necessarily just, your butt in the seat at the typewriter, or at the computer, typing away
Yeah,
at words. It's also
right.
always just like thinking of the story, thinking of maybe your next book, thinking about the structure of the characters. Like, despite the fact you're not quote unquote writing right now, I mean, are you still like, are your days consumed still of just like story ideas and like the next book? Or I mean, how do you, or like when do you
Yes.
start to transition then? Or maybe I guess the question is like, how many books are you kind of thinking about ahead?
I'm thinking about at the moment like a dozen books.
Yeah. Okay.
The problem for me is really turning off that idea spigot. Because I can kind of go off in a lot of different directions. This year in particular, earlier this year, I wrote a novella that is kind of something in a different genre. It's like speculative, historical, little bit of time travel, and I wrote it as kind of a gift for my husband. And that's kind of in the it's doing its own thing right now, but that's kind of how my weird brain works, is that I'm always not only thinking of the next story idea, the next pitch, but also like, or I could do this, or I could do that, or I could, I literally this morning I sent an email to my film agent because I want to adapt a novella that my cousin wrote into a screenplay. So I was asking her advice about like optioning. Yeah, it's just, I'm just always looking for a project. And so the issue is, how do I turn it off and like stop and smell the, blooming azaleas or whatever? They don't really
Yeah.
smell, but
I want to get back to this adapting thing, but first, the novella that you wrote for your husband. So, like, does he own the publishing rights now, the copyright? I mean, how does that work? What is going
no,
on with
well,
that?
I
Can you
wrote
talk
it
anything about
for,
that?
yeah, I wrote it for him in terms of it's dedicated to him.
Oh, I
Um,
see.
so yeah, yeah. because he is not, in his spare time, he will not go see a horror movie with me. I have to go to those by myself, or with my kid, one of my kids. Um, so he is a very much, he's a scaredy cat, basically, let's just say it. And so I was like, I really want to write you something that is up your alley, that makes you happy, that is kind of like in your wheelhouse. So yeah, I wrote a novella and it was so much fun.
Is there a plan? Is this like you're gonna self-publish it, or is it just for him, or like you're gonna shop?
No,
I mean, like, what's the plan for it?
I can't really talk about where it is right now, but I am hoping to traditionally publish it and present it to him as a book.
Had you written any? Because I'm trying to remember when we spoke last. Like, had you like dabbled in short stories, novellas previously?
Yeah.
Like initially, did you know this would be kind of a novella, or did you go into it thinking maybe it was a short story, it got a little longer, or I mean, I guess typically when you start working on a project, you have a pretty good eye sense of, okay, this is probably going to be around 80, 90,000 words, or this might only be about 20, 30,000.
Yeah, when I first started, so I wrote my first book, um, and this was like the first book that never got published. And it was kind of making the rounds. I was, in the querying trenches, as they say, trying to get an agent. And to kind of bide my time while all the rejections were flooding in. I wrote a lot of short stories. And it was kind of during that time. This was, a little over, this is probably 12, 13 years ago. And I really found, I love flash fiction, and I ended up getting published in several magazines. Nothing like too illustrious, but I started getting feedback that, oh, people liked my stories, and I felt like it was really good storytelling and writing practice. I have not written flash in a while, but I miss it. I have written another novella, and yeah, I just feel like sometimes if I come up with an idea that isn't straight up suspense that I know I could make into a book, if it's something else, yeah, it could be a short story, it could be a novella, and like novellas are really hard to sell. Like no publishers want novellas. I don't know why, because I think people really enjoy reading that length of fiction.
Yeah.
But
There are a handful. I mean, Amazon Originals now does those, and I think
Mhm.
Union Square recently is. I think they're starting a novella line, tour books. So there are publishers out there, but yes, mainstream publishers. It's very slim pickings, and oftentimes
Yeah,
they want some like big name authors in there.
yeah,
But real quick, in terms of this Flash, I'm trying to remember if we spoke about this last time because there was a time too where I kind of went through a Flash phase. And I think it was when I had started like my first website or blog, and I felt like I just had to get
right.
my name out there. And so there
Yeah.
was a lot of like online places. On your website, I'm not seeing any of them. Do you still have them online? Like, I mean, do you like if people wanted to like track down your old Flash fiction?
I mean, I should probably put links to them, but I just haven't bothered. I think at one point I had an old blog with a website and the links were there, so maybe I could find them. A lot of the magazines are defunct now.
Yeah.
Um, I had one that was featured in now I'm not even remembering the name, but it was like featured in a bigger magazine that like would feature, a story like once a week, like the story of the week. I think it was called long form. But that was kind of like my biggest success. Like I got, they picked my story. But yeah, I don't really keep up with those links because it just doesn't seem to really intersect with the novel market, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but
I
for
those
like
days were
the
fun.
hardcore Emily Carpenter fans might like to know
Yeah,
that. So,
I
in terms of
should.
the adapting thing, I was a couple of weeks ago now. I actually had a call, like a video conference with my film agent because we were discussing upcoming projects, and then also like right now, like short stories, novellas. Hollywood really that seems to be the thing. Like
Yes.
in terms of also novels, really short stories and novellas, and even my film agent sent me like several that had like sold for like at auction, and I actually read
Yeah.
one of them today, and it's like it wasn't. I personally I didn't think it was that good, at least writing wise, because I feel like
Yeah.
what they really want is the IP. They just want to see like, okay, overall, this is what the story is. Like like you would think like as a writer, it felt very much more telling than like the quote
Yeah.
unquote showing. It was just like very much boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
But one of the conversations we had, I was like, if I wanted to like write my own spec script because I've heard other screenwriters talk about this too, that it is almost harder now to sell a spec script. If
Yeah.
anything, if you write a spec script, you should adapt it into a short story and try to sell that. So for yours, I'm sure you have a
Right.
conversation with it. It might be good to try to sell that her novella first, and then you're able to then try to, get on to adapt it
Yeah. Well,
versus doing the spec
yeah.
script.
Well, he's already got it's my cousin, it's a he, and
Or,
he is no big deal. He is so he published this novella and made an audiobook and like it's out there. And I yeah, I think the spec script business is in the toilet. However, I think that it is kind of rebounding a little bit. It's coming back a little bit. And I would probably try to independently produce it myself because I have some filmmaking background and filmmaker friends, and um, that would be something I would be interested in. But yeah, I mean, I think, listen, there are a lot of out of work writers, and the WGA is hurting. I mean, they have so many, the Guild has, during this golden age of streaming that we had back in the 2010s, there were so many shows, and the size of the Guild grew so massively and quickly that they like killed their medical insurance, like the like they killed the whatever it was, the reserves for the medical insurance. And I when I think like I want to jump in and join the guild and be a TV writer or a film writer or screenwriter, I don't, that's not really my goal. I think there are people who are better at that job and need to be on those in those writer rooms. But I just know that I have a personal story that belongs to my cousin, and I would love to see and to try to get it made. So
yeah.
that's kind of how I'm looking at it. It's almost like a side project with very little pressure, you know?
I know that you had done like screenwriting in the past. Remind me again, had
Yeah.
you attempted to adapt any of your other books before?
No, I've never attempted to adapt. Actually, I have an unpublished manuscript that I did turn into a screenplay, but I haven't really done anything with it yet. It's still just kind of simmering. Um, I started off wanting to be a screenwriter. So those were the first things I wrote, like back in the 90s and the early 2000s. And, you know, back then, as now, one of the only ways you could break into the screenwriting business was to enter contests. So that's a huge drain on finances. And, it didn't get me that far. I did place in a few contests and like I got long listed for the Sundance Screenwriters Lab, but that's as close as I got. I mean, there's no access to like write a query and get an agent as a screenwriter. Like the
Yeah.
way it is for books, that path is not open. So it's not the kind of business that is very accessible. So I always feel like any sort of project that's film is definitely going to be like something like, a passion project that I do myself or, somebody happens to see. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's I think it was Kurt Sutter, the guy that created Sons of Anarchy. I think when he broke into, my understanding is a lot of times to be a screenwriter to get hired, oftentimes you had to write like a spec script. So I think he had wrote like a spec like West Wing script,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it wasn't necessarily
Yeah.
for West Wing, but it was something that he was able to show kind of as a writing sample to get him in. And I know a lot of authors who have transitioned or have gone back and forth with screenwriting. And sometimes the way to do it is like whenever there's really interest in a book and you have that leverage to be able
Yeah.
to like, sign on to adapt and
Right.
have that part of the thing. Because oftentimes I think studios or producers are very hesitant to have an author do that. But if there's, competitive situation where it's like, okay, we're willing to do this. I know one author who I think it was Universal and maybe some other studio, and only one of the studios was willing to let him adapt it.
Yeah.
So, of course they went with that. And, I guess ultimately it wasn't made, but still, and this is really geeking out now, but there's really good money in terms of
Yes.
just to write a draft or two to eventually
Yes.
get fired off. That's more money than you would probably get from the option. So,
Yes.
so like,
Yeah.
and then again, like you mentioned, the WGA, if you're able to get into the WGA, that's really great health insurance. But at
Yeah.
the same time, you need to do it consistently to stay in the WGA, which
Yeah.
is also an issue because,
Yeah.
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 Um,
I
so,
love the
so
idea, just to go back to what you were saying about the short stories. I love the idea that that they would option short stories because I think that's the closest thing to a movie.
yeah,
That, I books are much more to me series, like limited series. Like you want to go into some detail and have multi episodes, but like a short story, especially a flash story with a really good twist. The only problem is, it's tough to get those seen. Um,
yeah.
and that's funny. My film agent has never said, "Send me your short stories." I should ask her.
Have that conversation.
I
Have that
know.
conversation. So yeah, it's actually I think Tony Gilroy when he was promoting Andor, I think the second season or first season, he was talking about how for the longest time he was a short story writer because he was just doing films, but because
Yeah,
of Andor, he was able to do more of like a novel because he was able to spend several
yeah,
episodes really getting into the characters,
yeah,
which is very true with that like stories and novellas. It's funny because I remember having this conversation. I don't want to say who it was because I don't think it'd be embarrassing. But anyway, a very well-known writer friend of mine, we were chatting about this because he had adapted one of his books. And initially I was like, oh, like maybe like a limited series. I could see this book being like a 6 episode or whatever else. And he was like, nah, he's like a movie. He was like, if Gone Girl can be a movie, there's no reason any other book. And I was like, that's interesting because you could see Gone Girl being like a six, I'm not sure about 8 or 10. That seems like a lot, but like a 6 episode, okay. But somehow Gillian Flynn managed to make that into a feature. And still, like every single beat of that novel was in that movie. It's
and
really
don't
incredible. Something to
forget,
study.
and don't forget Gillian Flynn adapting the screenplay, but David Fincher directing, who is a
Yes.
master. So I think it takes somebody who is that in control of their craft to know how to shrink down a novel to a film. That's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, I love it. Inside baseball, man.
Well, I was talking to, and I did a live stream with Jordan Harper when She Rides Shotgun was released as a
Yeah,
movie, really focusing on the novel and how that went through the process. And I think I told him on the live stream, so I feel comfortable saying it again, where, I mean, just anything like film, TV, so many stars have to align for it to even be made. So much stuff
right,
gets a lot of stuff does not get optioned. A very small percentage of stuff does, and an even smaller, minuscule percentage actually gets produced. And some stuff might actually something might get made. It might be a pilot, but it might not get picked up. So
right,
all these little things have to happen for it to get to a place where like the mass public can even potentially see it. I mean, it might be on a streamer that no one like subscribes to, and then it gets
right,
lost.
exactly. Yeah,
Um, but then for it to actually be good,
I know.
that's a whole other thing. Like it's one thing
Right.
to actually have it made, but then for it to actually be good and like have staying power. Yeah, I mean, so many things have to go
Yeah.
right.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I mean, when you look at something like Gone Girl, I mean, that was just pristine, just and stands up through the years. I mean, David Fincher, what are you going to say? That's it.
That's
He
right.
can adapt any of my books. Give me a
All
call,
right, we'll
David.
put it out there. We'll put it out there. So, all right. Well, so remind me again, when you are writing, are you somebody that likes to outline or just kind of sit down with an idea or character and kind of go from there, or is it kind of maybe a hybrid?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta outline because I'll get myself into trouble, like in a very zoomed out macro way. If I just jump in too soon with, nothing but enthusiasm, there's going to be trouble. I'm going to have to untangle knots and threads that, can't be untangled. So yeah, I do start with a pretty, but it's a very basic three-act structure with the turning points. It follows the Sid Field screenplay model, which is a three-act structure with turning point, inciting incident, turning point between the first and second act, a midpoint in the middle of the second act, and then a third turning point that spins you off into the third act. And it's a very cinematic way of telling a story, but I find that it works perfectly for my brain. And it's just enough sort of scaffolding for me to employ without getting too in the weeds or committing myself to plot points that, end up changing or, whatever.
So, do you typically know what the ending is going to be, like maybe like the final twist, or does that sometimes change? Maybe you have that in mind and it changes as you write it, or is it always like when you start, whatever you kind of think the ending is kind of always what it is going to be?
Well, I mean, let's just talk about A Spell for Saints and Sinners. Specifically, when I pitched it to my editor, Ingrid, the main character, was a much sort of anti-heroine character. She was much darker and doing, bad things and on purpose and sort of exacting revenge. And that was kind of how I spun the story, which included an ending with her masterfully sort of, tying up. But as I started writing the story, that Ingrid did not want to be that kind of person. And she really just she started being someone that I felt a great deal of empathy for, who she got abandoned by her mother, dropped off on her grandmother's doorstep. She's bullied as a kid, she's just she's an outsider. She's struggling for money and not doing well. And she does do some like very morally gray things in the process of the story, but ultimately she is somebody that I she ended up being somebody that I was really rooting for. And I think it just like the ending still ended the same way, but it didn't happen in the same way. She wasn't the same character, minding this ending. She was just kind of hanging on for dear life and trying to figure it out as she went. So that was kind of interesting. And by the time I turned it into my editor, she was, I had forgotten what I had pitched. And my editor was like, oh, wow, Ingrid's like a lot more sympathetic in this version. I didn't expect, I kind of expected her to be. And I was like, I couldn't do it, man. She got to me. She grabbed my heart and like I just felt bad for her. And yeah, I don't think I write those kind of like super badass vengeance filled women very well.
Yeah.
That's just
Well,
not my thing.
let's jump back a little bit. Can you tell people like what is this book about? A Spell for Saints and Sinners. Like what's the setup and tell us about, how, about Ingrid.
Sure. Okay, so Ingrid is a sidewalk psychic. She lives in Savannah, Georgia, and she runs her psychic business that her grandmother left her. Her grandmother Edie has passed away now. Edie also left her a gorgeous old historic townhouse that's kind of crumbling around Ingrid's ears as she is like struggling to make money to pay the taxes on the townhouse and keep it in one piece. She has a roommate, Miles, who is a guy who leads ghost tours and he helps her around the place for kind of free room and board, and they're best friends. And then one day, Ingrid does a reading for the daughter of the wealthiest family in Savannah, and she nails the reading. And she is pulled into this family's world of wealth and secrets and all sorts of shenanigans. And soon Ingrid realizes she might be in so deep that it's going to take possibly some dangerous magic spells and rituals that she learned from her grandmother to get her out.
Have you had like psychic readings done before?
I have. Um, I've had one. No, I've had two. Um, but I had not had any before I wrote this book. And I
So this
was
was
like,
like kind of research type thing you wanted to
I
have
did a
done?
ton of research just in terms of reading about like having a practice of witchcraft and the different kinds of witchcraft that are modern and contemporary and that people actually do, that they incorporate into their lives. I started with a really fabulous memoir by Dana Helmuth called The Witching Year, which is really great about this. She tells her own story of like spending a year learning witchcraft and like really dedicating herself to pursuing it. And it's really illuminating and funny and touching. And so I learned a lot through that book, and then a lot of reference books about like all different kinds of rituals, all different kinds of spells, like all the different kinds of witchcraft and Wiccan and paganism, and it was a lot. And then I went for a tarot reading and some other stuff with a psychic in Savannah. And that was fantastic, actually. He like nailed it, like in a really scary way. So I was very nervous because, like, although I'm interested in all that kind of stuff, I had never wanted to like subject myself to I didn't like I was just nervous about what he was going to say. Um and yeah, it was not scary at all. And I feel like I learned a lot. And yeah, it was just kind of funny, some of the things he said. Like at one point, he said, he was talking about my life being balanced. And he said, for instance, like when you're working, you're playing, and when you're playing, you're working. And he looked at me and he said, for instance, you're working right now. And I was like, yes, I'm doing research on psychics for my book. Um, so there were like several moments that he really nailed it.
And you just showed up. It wasn't like you had an appointment where he was able
No, I made an
to
appointment.
like. Okay.
I made an
So
appointment.
like are they
He
like
could have
researching
Googled
you ahead of
me.
time and
He
stuff?
could
Like I guess the
have.
question is like what is
Yeah.
I don't know, like is it one of those things because you hear stories where it's like, oh, they're just like, con people and other people are like, no, no, this is real. I mean, like where do you based on your experience, where do you come down on that?
Um, yeah, I had the same thought. I was like, he could have Googled me easily. But on the other hand, I mean, this guy is booked. Like, I don't think I don't think this guy would just what I got of him and I think he believes in what he does. And I don't think he would have time to do all that. I mean, he might, but I mean, he had appointments like back to back. But
Yeah.
even if he did, I just was like, nah, I just think this is a message for me. I don't know. I think it's real, actually. I believe in it. I do not think it is I don't think it is easily wielded. I will put it that way. I don't think that a lot of the ritual stuff is kind of a process to get you to that other side or to get you in line with what's happening or to get you to get what you want. And I don't think it's that easy. I think whatever that thing is on the other side, the cosmic will or the universe or whatever, I I think that we can kind of touch it and see it and connect with it. I don't know that we can manipulate it. So that's kind of where I am right now,
Yeah.
but I don't know for sure.
And then I guess most importantly, because it was research, were you able to write off that session? Do you have you had the receipt and everything?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Excellent. So,
It
remind me again. So, when you're writing, like, how many drafts do you typically, how like, could you just do like one draft? Are you editing as you go, and then that's what
I don't know.
you send to your editor and agent, or do you like go through several? I mean, at what point do you feel comfortable letting other people see it?
I have been burned by letting people see stuff too early. I write very quickly. I just try to get it out of me as fast as I can, tell myself the story. And so it's super messy. I do
The
not
Nora
really,
Roberts vomit method.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. I don't, so I have a lot of edits and I'm a very impatient person. And so I want to skip all those edits and I want it to be perfect and beautiful and send it, but it's not. It's a mess. And so I need like 6 or 7 edits to get it coherent.
Do you when you're reading through different drafts, like I don't know about you, like oftentimes I will like format it to read it on my Kindle or on my iPad or whatever to so
Mhm.
like you're not necessarily like at the sitting at the computer screen. Do you do anything like that to or even like print it out to like read it how it is on paper? Like just because I feel like your mind
Yeah.
is a little bit different when it's consuming it in a different like format as opposed to
Yeah.
just on the a Word doc.
Yeah, I've heard that, and like I've heard like, put it in a different font, or, and look, I never do any of that. I just sit at my computer. I have printed it out before, and I just get like frustrated. I like get to the second chapter and I'm like, what am I doing? And I go back to my laptop and there it is. And, the one thing I have done is read things aloud. I think for me, that makes a really big difference to actually just read it aloud at the laptop. But yeah, I've heard all those tricks and I can't be bothered. I'm just sitting at the laptop doing the editing.
Yeah. No, I think reading aloud is extremely important.
Yeah,
It kind of shocks me sometimes. Again, everybody has their own, the way that they write, and like
right.
nothing against people who don't necessarily read aloud, but like I don't know, like personally, I just feel like, really good writing has a nice rhythm and flow to it. And the only
Yeah,
way you can really I guess, perfect that in a way is hearing it, aloud, is hearing it how it actually, because it's one thing with your eye
yeah,
seeing it, but to actually hear the rhythm of the words or the
yes,
sentences, it's
yeah,
yeah, you really just have to read it out loud.
yeah. And I will say for me too, like I'm definitely a visual person. Like I love the look of words on the page and the way the paragraph looks and the way the sentences look. I love all that. So when I read it aloud, hearing it is almost like that secondary sense, and I'm almost paying attention in a different way, because it's not like I have a hard time with audiobooks. I love them, but I miss stuff. It's just, I guess the auditory is not really my primary sense.
I have found it really comes down to the narrator.
Oh, yeah.
There are certain
Oh, yeah.
narrators who they're just always solid. I'm able to just really concentrate on their voices. Other
Yeah.
narrators, something about their voice or like the way they're telling the story, my
I
mind just
know.
wanders, and then I realize 10 minutes have passed and I have no idea what just happened in
I
this
know.
chapter.
I know. I know. It's really bad. And yeah, I can only listen to audiobooks with like the most engaging narrator. By the way, I will just say if we're putting things out into the atmosphere here at the universe, there's the David Fincher is welcome to uh direct any of my books. Also, Ray Porter, if you ever want to narrate a book for me, yes. The answer is yes. He's
Yeah.
incredible. He narrated Project Hail Mary. And
Yeah.
that's the only audiobook that I was just like riveted by his, not only the book, obviously fantastic, but his performance was spectacular. So,
Yeah, Ray does a really good job. I mean, he does a lot of sci-fi, but he's also done a lot of he did Don Winslow's Border trilogy. He's done a lot of other things.
yep,
He does
yep,
like, Brian Andrews and Jeff Wilson, their tier one books. And yeah, Ray definitely is one of the best. The thing though about Project Hail Mary, the audiobook, like I listened to the audiobook too, when it first came out. So like I didn't
right,
actually read it because I remember then talking to someone who had read it.
right.
And if I remember correctly, there was like initially when he's trying to the main character is trying to start communicating with the alien, like the audiobook did that thing with like the sound effects with like the tones
Yeah,
and stuff, which
yes,
obviously was not, was kind of missed when you're reading it. So like it
right.
really enhanced the audiobook.
Yeah, I think so. I think the audio had a little bit of an advantage in that way.
Yeah. But real quick, so in terms of a spell for saints and sinners, your publicist sent along obviously publicity materials. There was a real thing though about focusing on Savannah. So,
Yeah.
what is it about Savannah that you wanted to set this book here for? And was this the very first book that you've set
Yeah.
that like you set in Savannah?
Yeah, I live in Georgia, and I tend to set my books in either Georgia, where I live, or Alabama, where I'm from. And you know, for years I've been going to the Savannah SCAD Film Festival, which is typically in October down in Savannah with SCAD, the Savannah College of Art and Design. They have this amazing film festival. It's right in the middle of, historic downtown. They have these two historic theaters that have been completely renovated. Like all these movie stars and directors. Like I got to see Oppenheimer there, and Hoyte van Hoytema, the cinematographer that won the Academy Award, was interviewed afterwards. And I was like on the front row listening to this like genius man describe how they, built this IMAX camera thing. And so for a film nerd, I'm like in heaven. So, but meanwhile, all these years I'm attending the festival, I'm exploring Savannah really for the first time in my adulthood, and I'm just like falling in love with this city. So I tried to get my youngest son. He was looking at colleges, and we went and toured SCAD because he's an artist, but he did not want to go there. And then I tried to get my husband to move there. I was like, we could just, it's just, 3.5 hours. But that was a no-go as well. And I just thought I'm gonna set a book here. I just don't know which book and what story sort of belongs here. And then I had the idea for Saints and Sinners, and I was like, oh, there it is. Like she's a psychic and she's a witch as well, and that fits perfectly in that kind of in the ghostly kind of haunted historic city that Savannah is. So I got to do a few more research trips. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
was the title always in your head, A Spell for Saints and Sinners, or was it one of those things that changed through, through the publication process?
No, this was the title that I came up with right away, and I thought it's okay to have a long title because it's all of this, a court of thorns and roses, and I was like, okay, I can have my long title, and I thought it sounded kind of Southern Gothic and kind of lush and kind of like a bit overdone, and I liked the feel of it, and it stayed. They kept it.
Yeah. And this is your seventh novel, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Are all your novels are they all in like their own self-contained universes, or are they all like kind of like a Stephen King, like, they're all a Stephen King universe, like, there's
Yeah, yeah,
references
yeah.
to Derry or references to other books that take
Right,
place
right,
that
right.
like a casual reader might not even notice, but other readers might be like, oh yeah, this character, like, yeah, I mean, like, is that something, or is that you don't even really think about that when you're writing?
Yeah, not really. I love that Stephen King did that. I'm like, what a genius, just like interconnecting, like even the different genres, like the what is it, the Dark Tower, or Black Tower? Is it Dark Tower?
Dark Tower, yeah.
Dark Tower books are like all connected, and like the Randall Flagg character shows up, and everything. Oh, what a genius. But I am not that genius, and most of my books are standalone. I have two books that are related. My first book, Burying the Honeysuckle Girls, and my fifth book, Reviving the Hawthorne Sisters, are kind of a set. Um, a bit of a duology. The only little connective tissue um, in my books started in book three. My main character's name is Daphne Amos, and that book is called Every Single Secret. And I love that character, Daphne Amos, but she has no family. She's basically an orphan. She was in the um, foster system. And so I'm trying to remember when I started doing this. I don't think it was immediately the next book, but definitely in Gothictown and in Spell for Saints and Sinners. And then my next book coming up, Swamp Music, I have a character with the last name Amos, who in my mind is a distant relative of Daphne Amos, who had no family. So I seed some Amoses in all of my books so that Daphne will have family.
Good. I was just thinking about like obviously I write under a pen name too. So one of my books, I set a location in one of my Robert Swartwood novels. There was a location that had appeared in my Avery Bishop book, Girl Gone Mad. So now I
Yeah.
have these,
Oh, I love
it was
that.
just like it was like this, it was like this lake or whatever. That's how something
Right.
happens, and again, it's one of those things too where it's just like almost nobody's even going to notice
All
or
right.
care.
Yes.
But in my head, it's like, all right, okay, it's a little fun little thing to throw in there.
I
So
just
well,
thought of
let's.
something. I just thought of something in Gothic Town. I referenced some characters, these girls that were from Maine, the Fears family. They were a oil family. That those characters are actually from a friend of mine's book. So they're fictional and they're from her book. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk real quick. So you mentioned the next book. Is there anything you can tell us, just a little bit of a sneak peek in terms of what to expect
Yeah.
coming? Is it next year or when's the next one coming out?
Next year, 2027. Yes. And I believe in the summer. I'm not sure yet. But yeah, it's called Swamp Music and it's a retelling of Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, but it's set in present day Muscle Shoals, Alabama, which is like in the Americana roots music scene up there. Muscle Shoals was like back in the 60s. It was like the place to record your music. Aretha Franklin recorded Respect there at Fame Studios, and the Rolling Stones and Wilson Pickett, and like on and on and on. So it is a really sort of hallowed place up there in the shoals, like right on the Tennessee River in Northwest Alabama. So, yeah, the story is a young singer-songwriter who plays the banjo. Um, she is wanting this iconoclastic producer who's been hiding out on his family's vast property to produce her debut album, and she gets sort of pulled into his thrall. Yeah. So, and if you know anything about Rebecca, that'll give you a little hint about where the story goes.
Very good. In the time remaining, what have you read? Have you read, watched anything recently, listened to anything recently that you really enjoyed that you would recommend?
Um, let's see. I have not been reading anything but blurbs. I will say, Nicole
And to
Blade.
be clear for people who don't understand, you mean books
Oh,
coming
yeah.
out that you are blurbing, not just you're reading people's blurbs or whatever.
I'm reading four blurbs, which is so I can make a little comment. Yeah, okay, I forget titles. Nicole Blades has a great book coming out called Would I Lie to You? And I will say, I'm trying to look at the date of that. I really, really enjoyed that book. That's coming out the 21st, April 21st. And what I'm watching is, oh my gosh, I am obsessed with this TV show on HBO that nobody else is talking about really, and it's so weird, but it's called DTF St. Louis.
Yeah, I've been watching it.
You have?
It's Stephen Conrad. Last
Yes.
episode is this week.
Yes, I am obsessed with it. I think it is the funniest, weirdest, smartest. most unusual thing I've seen in a long time. And the acting is impeccable. Everyone in it is just at the top of their game. And it's just like these wild, insane, dark things happening in the suburbs of St. Louis. And it's just a thing of beauty. I love it.
So I don't want to say it's a spoiler alert, but David Harbour, he has this thing that happened to his penis, and they mention it, but you don't know what it is. And I remember
Yeah,
watching this with my wife. This was like a week or so ago, and she's like, "I can't believe this show makes me want to find out
I
what
know.
happened to his
I
penis."
know. I mean, there is so like even the dialogue is so odd, but it's so I don't know. I just whatever that show has in it, it was made specifically for me because I just love it. And it's like tender and it's about friendship and like, I don't know how it's going to end, but I mean, it's a murder show about friendship and love.
Yeah, I have a theory, but I don't know. We
Don't
can
tell me
talk off the
nothing.
live stream, but because I
I
mean,
just
yeah,
think,
the last season is this because then Euphoria is coming back for its final season. So,
yeah, yeah,
HBO always kind of like schedules their shows, so like when one season is ending or one limited series is ending, it's because of new, something new's coming out.
yeah. Well,
But
they're doing
yeah,
really
that's good.
well. Also watching The Pit, like every other human on the planet, but love The Pit.
The Pit is, do you ever watch on YouTube Dr. Mike?
Mm-mm,
He's one of these doctors, and he does this thing because he's worked, I guess, in ERs, and he's like a practicing doctor, and he has a really big
right.
following. And we started watching, like he'll watch the episodes and kind of like give his feedback, like, oh, because the Pit is very very accurate in terms of
Yeah,
everything going on.
yeah.
But he'll nitpick here and there, being like, they should really be wearing masks when they're like, in like doing the
Right,
surgery. It's like
right,
obviously,
right, 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 right.
and for whatever reason, I ended up like, because YouTube will like recommend things. It was like, Dr. Mike critiquing like old episodes of Scrubs. And like he was doing, or like, St. Dennis Medical, like just like these comedies. But he's like seriously like breaking it down. It's like, all right, well,
So funny.
that's not really fun.
No,
It's more
no.
interesting when I guess when it's a serious thing. But yeah, the pit
Yeah,
is great.
Pit is
That's
great.
something too where you don't really know what's going to happen. Like he just leaves you in
No.
suspense because you really have no idea. And I love too because it's an ER setting. These characters can just come and go. Like
Yeah.
the one intern character was basically like, okay, my shift's done. I'm leaving.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean there are enough surprises on that show and, DTF St. Louis that those two shows like really hearten me in terms of like where we're looking at, the future of AI and we have these doomsayers saying like AI is going to write everything and sure, it will, but it won't be the pit, and it won't be DTF St. Louis, and it won't be Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And, I mean, there are people still want good stories and good writing and, something inventive and original and like different. So,
So you watched Night of Seven Kingdoms too?
oh yeah, loved it.
I was pretty Game of Throned out, and I initially had no interest, but I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. And it's probably like my favorite Game of Thrones thing.
Oh my gosh, yes, of course.
It
Like
was just
after,
because it's such like a side story, like the stakes are
yes.
so low, but
And
it was just so well made.
yeah, and those actors, both of those actors, the Dunk and Egg to get, I was like, that child is adorable. He is so cute. So yeah, it was heartening.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so the new book is A Spell for Saints and Sinners. It's available as ebook, audiobook, paperback, right?
Yep. Yep.
And it's available in bookstores. If people wanted to stalk you online, where's the best way to do that?
Instagram is where I'm mainly hanging out, emily.d.c. I'm also on Facebook, also on Threads occasionally.
Okay, very good. Anything else we didn't cover, Emily? Anything else you want to
I feel
mention?
like
Any proclamations?
we covered
No,
the whole world
I believe we
of
did. So,
entertainment.
all right. So, thanks so much, Emily, for hanging out, and everybody, we'll check you out next time. Bye.
Thank you.